Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is Marcy. I'm just going to go over a brief agenda with you all. I'm going to introduce the presenters for today on both the Tier 1 and City of Lakeland side, give a brief overview of who Tier 1 is, and then if time permits, then we'll go into the actual City of Lakeland upgrade project, and then if time permits, we will take some additional questions and comments from you all. About the presenters, I have been here at Tier 1 for about 14 years. I lead the sales organization and the marketing organization here. Been in sales my entire career, I guess 23 years now. Tim?
Hi, everyone. My name's Tim Holman. I've been working on projects in the Oracle space for well over 20 years. I've been with Tier 1 for just about 2 years now, and just continue to work out and working on client-specific projects related to Oracle, upgrades, new implementations, and such.
Thanks, Tim. And then with us from the City of Lakeland, we have Susan Gardner-Nyhoff, who is the Oracle eBusiness Suite Systems Analyst. That was one of our main points of contact during the upgrade project. Also, Tim Marsh, who was the Senior PM on the project, and Juan Hernandez, who is the DBA on the project. And I'll give you guys out there a real brief synopsis on who we are and what we do. Tier 1 is obviously an Oracle partner. We focus exclusively on Oracle technologies and applications, eBusiness Suite, Hyperion, as well as EPM and ERP Cloud. We've been doing this since 2003, so we are very proficient in our knowledge, and we're based up here in Pittsburgh, where unfortunately it is about 50 degrees, and we almost had snow this weekend. Like I said, we focus only on Oracle, and within that realm, we provide 24/7 managed services for functional, technical, and DBA support. We provide implementations, obviously upgrades. We have over, or almost close to 60 now, upgrades under our belts. And then we also can host your Oracle applications in Tier 1's private cloud appliance, if that is ever of interest. And just something that sets us apart from many other vendors out there. All of our consultants have at least 10 years of experience within their respective Oracle disciplines. We don't hire anybody, out of college or any junior level associates. Everybody here has been around the eBusiness Suite for many, many years, going back all the way to version 10.7 with some of our individuals. That's all I wanted to say on Tier 1. At this point, I will turn it over to Tim, and he will take us underway with the City of Lakeland project background and get into the upgrade from there.
Great. Thank you, Marcy. So again, my name is Tim Holman. I had the pleasure of working with Susan and Tim and Juan on the City of Lakeland upgrade project. And we want to give you just a little bit of a background on the project itself. So the project, we actually started the project and kicked it off in January 21 of 2020. Not really know what was coming around in the world to us, but we went live in June 15th of 2020 as planned. The versions and modules, again, it was an EBS upgrade from 12.1.3 to 12.2.9, included GLAP, fixed assets, purchasing, iSupplier, sourcing, and even some OATs. Location, again, we kicked off the meeting itself in Lakeland, Florida, with the intention of coming back at several different points throughout the project, but the remainder of the project was actually done remotely, and of course that was due to COVID-19. Tier 1's role in the project was shared project management with Susan and Tim, and DBA, we did the first round of the DBA support and upgrade, and then we worked with Juan hand in hand for the rest of it, where Juan completed the rest of it. We worked with Susan and her team on the functional and the development pieces as well. So it's basically the background of the project itself. And then we'll go in and we'll start talking about just what some of the initial project goals were. Right, so I think we want to talk about first of all, what were some of those business drivers that initiated the EBS upgrade, Susan and Tim and Juan? Just why did you have the need to go and do the EBS upgrade itself?
So our main driver was the 12.1 Premier support, which ends December 2021. New functionality was really not a driving force in our decision when we upgraded. As far as the available timeline, we wanted to give ourselves plenty of leeway time-wise to complete the upgrade, and we wanted to avoid running up against the support deadline where we had to convert over to sustaining support. And then the third factor was our upgrade was budgeted for fiscal year 2020. Our fiscal year runs from October 1st through September 30th, and we budgeted the upgrade for fiscal year 2020.
And just to add in, we typically use a strategy to try and go ahead and get on that new version maybe a year before it goes out of Premier support. It's very important to us to get those regulatory patches and fixes from Oracle. So we shoot for a scenario like this where we would complete our upgrade a year before it goes into a secondary level of support.
All right, great. Thank you. I think let's move on to the next question. So that was kind of your drivers of why you want to do it. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your decision-making process was that actually led you to select Tier 1 as a partner?
Sure. So first of all, their pricing was very competitive. We had a very limited budget for the upgrade. It ended up getting slashed quite a bit, but Tier 1 was able to accomplish what we needed with our available funds. And then Tier 1 also had previous successful EBS 12.2 upgrades under their belt, and they had references. And we followed up with those references, and they all had really good things to say about Tier 1. And also Tier 1 delivered what they promised. And another point is every Tier 1 consultant had a lot of experience in their field. The financing and purchasing leads that they provided came equipped with the functional and technical knowledge, and they had many implementations and upgrades under their belt. Like they mentioned before, there were no trainees that were on the Tier 1 team. All the Tier 1 resources that were provided were seasoned veterans, and it was easy to tell that throughout the whole project working with them. And also, Tier 1 stuck with the basics. We didn't have anyone doing up like fancy information dashboards and charts and graphs that added little value to the project. And then the last point, this sounds kind of funny, no jerks. The team was down to earth and easy to work with. It's a little bit laughable, but those of you who have had to deal with this type of personality on a project know how it can impact the morale and the project overall. And the team that Tier 1 provided, there was no arrogance or egos. The team just focused on the work to be done and completed it successfully.
Great. Anything further, Tim or Juan?
I think Susan covered it well there.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, I think we can move forward then. So that kind of talks about your business drivers, why you, why you upgraded, and then why you chose Tier 1. So let's talk a little bit about the upgrade itself and during the upgrade, just get a little better idea of how that happened and move forward. So obviously we had COVID-19 that came in. It wasn't there when we did our kickoff and came in shortly after. So how did that impact the project from your standpoint?
Yeah, so we went on lockdown right before we went into CRP1. So we had to really the team had to be flexible and be able to make adjustments to the project schedule to allow additional time for testing. So the teams were on both sides were very adaptable, and we were able to accomplish that. We were also concerned about key team members getting sick, not only for people's personal health, but also that it could impact the project and the project timeline as well. And we didn't really have any wiggle room in the budget for any type of extension. So the team was extra diligent due to the pandemic. And then we had a very personal experience regardless of the remote work. The remote work was actually transparent to the team. Those of us here on the city, we're dispersed among different locations across the city. So we were used to doing meetings via conference call anyway. So transitioning over to working completely remote with the Tier 1 team was really not an issue for us. We did it very smoothly. And ultimately, we ended up going live under budget and ahead of time, and we had zero travel costs. That's how we were able to come in under budget. Initially, we planned to have the Tier 1 team on site during key phases of the project, but ultimately we wound up going 100% remote.
And I think as we envisioned this project originally, we were looking for that very personal experience and having our partners on site. And when I've looked at different RFPs, I normally bucket them into, you've got them on site and you've got a team in front of you that you're working closely with, and then you've got the offshore or outsourced version where very impersonal, but COVID-19 changed a lot of how we work together. It changed how we communicate within our organization, and then also with our consulting partner Tier 1. And so it managed to still remain a personal and committed experience where everyone that we had met during the kickoff meeting continued to be on those calls and working directly with us. And so I think we really still achieved that experience that we were looking for to ensure a successful project. I'll also say we have at the city, we have a fairly robust VDI infrastructure, so we're able to spin up virtual desktops as we need, and that helped a great deal for our organization to be able to have the resources for remote work, as well as I think it helped give the resources that Tier 1 needed to be able to connect to our systems too.
Great, thanks. Let's move forward and talk about maybe some things. COVID came in and lots of unexpected things. So maybe what are some things that went better than you actually expected?
So as we had our end users doing the testing, of course, we were doing that all remote. And as issues were discovered during testing, the team was able to resolve those very quickly. We maintained an issues log that was stored online and available to everyone on the team to update as needed. So when an issue was found, it was reported on the issues log, and with constant monitoring and emails, the team was able to pick those issues up, work on them, identify the fix, and get it resolved as quickly as possible. We also had a very smooth go live. In fact, it's the smoothest go live I have ever been on, and I've done many, many implementations and upgrades in the past. We had a pre-go live checklist to ensure nothing was missed, and that was reviewed via team meetings to ensure everybody understood the plan in place to address post-production issues right away. And there was no finger pointing when challenges arose. There were no egos on the team and no taking sides. The team just worked together and pulled together and solved the issues that arose very quickly. Our documentation was spot on and very detailed. Even before the project started, the systems analyst, myself, had completed a set of test scripts in advance where we actually met one-on-one with each of the functional module leads and identified every single process they run in the system, every customization they use, every report they run, every form they use in EBS. And we were able to create a very detailed test script with screenshots and navigations, and we were able to hand that over to the Tier 1 financial and procurement leads, and they were able to use those to understand what we do in the system and also understand what we don't use. And also, we had no change orders. We set expectations up front with both the City of Lakeland and Tier 1 teams that the budget was limited and we had no wiggle room for extending that. So we set the ground rules up front that there would be no new functionality and no coding changes other than those that were needed in order to get the upgrade completed.
And I'll say that no change orders was a really big deal for me, and definitely something that I feel went better than expected. In most of the times that I've gotten to work with vendors on other projects, there's kind of a back and forth on any sort of change or modification that has to happen to the project and kind of whose fault it was and maybe a setup for a change order coming down the pike. But that never happened during this project. It was a very comfortable project. I think we all adapted reasonably to any sort of changes that we experienced, and definitely felt that Tier 1 was a partner in this and not just looking to angle for the next change order.
So as far as like the DBA side, the documentation was big for me because I actually performed the Go Live upgrade on my own with the documentation that Tier 1 created for me, and it was very detailed and easy to follow.
Great, thanks. Let's what went better than expected. Let's talk about maybe some of the challenges that we had to overcome during the project as well. I know obviously we had COVID, but there were other challenges either related to COVID or unrelated, just project challenges. So let's talk about those challenges just a little bit.
So as far as remote communication, the Tier 1 project manager, who was Tim Holman, consulted with the project team frequently through regular status meetings. And he published an agenda out in advance so everyone knew what was going to be discussed in each meeting. And everyone on the team really made a concerted effort to join the meetings. And also the shared documentation we established the issues log to track issues as they arose, and that was stored in a shared repository. And we also had timely email communications between team members, which was really critical for working remotely. Tier 1 also brought in additional resources during the project when we needed them. We had two particular instances that stood out. The first one is we had problems on the technical side building the iSupplier test environment. And we also had problems just before go live getting an application called Eventex, which is a third-party application for transmitting POs. We had problems getting that to work. And Tier 1 was able to work directly with Eventex to get that issue resolved. Another challenge we overcame were no surprises. Those of you who have been on an upgrade or implementation know that a surprise during that process is not a good one. So we didn't have any surprises that popped up. The project was well thought out in advance, and the systems analyst, myself, met with end users to identify ahead of time everything that they do in the system. So we didn't have anyone coming up during CRP saying, oh, what about this process, or what about this form? That was all identified up front, so no surprises there. Tier 1 also ran a series of readiness scripts to identify the customizations in advance. So when we went into the project, all the customizations were accounted for, and as a result, they were properly tested. And then another challenge that we had to overcome was getting end users to participate in the testing phases. In addition to working on the upgrade project, our end users were also responsible for getting their day-to-day job done as well. So this was an extra effort that was added on to those folks. And those of you who have been on upgrade projects or implementation projects know how challenging it can be to get the end users engaged. So Tier 1's financial and procurement leads worked very well with the City of Lakeland team to run through the test scripts in advance and fix any issues ahead of time, so that when it came time for our end users to test, they could really focus on completing their test scenarios without running into a lot of issues.
All right, why don't we talk a little bit about the collaboration between Tier 1's project team and the City of Lakeland, and how that work looked and felt to you?
So the teams came from similar background and experiences. Me personally, I had come from a background where I had implemented Oracle for clients, so I understood what the Tier 1 team was up against. So in an unspoken kind of way, we knew what to expect from one another. And the City of Lakeland team, the end users are very experienced as well. And they just didn't sit back and expect Tier 1 to resolve all the issues that came up. Everybody really pitched in and participated in investigating the issues. So any problems that were discovered were resolved very quickly. And our personalities fit together very well. The Tier 1 and City of Lakeland teams really clicked, and that played a major role in the success of the project. The personalities of team members fit together, so the project went smoothly. And like we mentioned previously, there was no finger pointing, no complaints, or no egos that got in the way. And then Tier 1 offered honest advice. As part of the upgrade, we had the opportunity to rethink our architecture, and Tier 1 was able to offer some pros and cons on what our footprint should look like in the future.
I would say, when you talked about the no jerks earlier, that goes both ways. So City of Lakeland didn't have any jerks on your team either. Like you said, the personalities fit well, the teams and experiences and the background fit well, went both ways to make a good project team.
Thank you, Tim.
And that's something that's hard to quantify, but it's really true.
And this, of course, required a big shift in our strategy. We started off the project with the folks here at the city blocking off workspaces and making sure we had network access and getting badges for folks and all those sorts of things that a physical presence requires. And then was quickly had to be rethought. So you know, in addition to looking at the mobile communication and what options we had as far as conferencing and so forth, you know, we're all here at the city packing up our desks too. And so you know, it's quite a revelation for me that I think it was good to have that initial kickoff in person. We all got to shake hands. We got to do a little bit of the prep planning work and a little bit of that strategy work. But then it carried on nicely through just remote technologies. And you know, here at the city, we had to make adaptations for the work we did, and I think it really created a good environment at the end of the day.
So let's talk a little bit about if you think others could do a completely remote upgrade as well.
Yeah, the answer to that is absolutely, but communication is the key. So up front, each team member needs to have a clear understanding of their role and the tasks that they'll be responsible for. And the project schedules need to be discussed, and if there's any changes, promptly updated, and those communications sent out to the users as soon as possible. Frequent status updates are a must, weekly or more frequently as the project phases dictate. And then end users need to provide feedback as necessary. So our end users communicated CRP issues clearly. If they discovered a problem, they provided screenshots of any error messages and the navigation steps to reproduce the issue. So that was very helpful to those of us, the Tier 1 team and myself who were troubleshooting issues. We were able to get all that information up front and didn't have to worry about following back and asking a lot of additional questions from the users. And then any future opportunities, our experience with Tier 1 and working remote opened up the opportunity to work with additional vendors in a remote manner. The pandemic has forever changed the way we do business. But one good thing that came out of that is we proved it's possible to successfully complete a large project 100% remote.
Great, and I think you touched on a lot of these already, but let's just talk about our lessons learned just a little bit, and if there's anything there that you want to highlight a little bit more.
Yeah, run the readiness scripts. Those are really critical to account for your customizations up front because you don't want any surprises. Keep it simple. Don't try to do too much, and set the understanding with your end users that there will be no new functionality introduced. And just get upgraded first and then worry about adding in new functionality later. And then involve multiple departments in the vendor selection. Our selection team consisted of a developer, a systems analyst, a DBA, and then the functional module leads from finance and procurement. So once we published the RFQ out to vendors, we developed a weighted matrix to score the vendors that responded. And that matrix was based on cost, qualifications, financial stability, and project constraints. So once we got the RFQs back in, the team reviewed each of those responses, each of those quotes, and we were able to score each vendor, and then we compared our results, and Tier 1 came out on top. And then last but really important is it's great to do the analysis, but stick to your gut also. One of the things that we noticed when we met with the Tier 1 team is that we got along with them really well. We liked the folks, and we thought, this is a team that we can work with and work with well. So, stick with your gut feel on that because it's really important.
All right, thank you. Let's talk about, we're just about done here, just a couple more slides to wrap it up, but just the working with Tier 1, you've already touched on a lot of this as well as you went through the presentation, but what qualities or adjectives would you say define your experience with Tier 1 and this upgrade?
Okay, so successful. Tier 1 delivered ahead of time and under budget, capable and experienced. There were no rookies. Each resource provided had deep subject matter knowledge, and the Tier 1 members were able to interact with our end users immediately. Flexible. The team was willing to change as needed. And even after we went live, we had some extra time, and the Tier 1 procurement lead was able to develop a solution to capture additional data upon iSupplier registration. So, that was something a little bit extra that they gave to us when we had some extra time. The team was committed. They knew what we had to do, and they got it done. The team was pleasant. There were no confrontations made during the project, and it was actually a very enjoyable project. Once we went live and the Tier 1 team rolled off, we really missed them. The team was thorough. There were no surprises because the work was done up front to root out all the issues that could arise. So everything was accounted for.
And how would you describe your partnership with Tier 1 now?
Tier 1 keeps in touch with me. Drew reaches out from time to time to see if Tier 1 can help us out with any new projects. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we don't have any budget for new projects, but we definitely plan to partner with Tier 1 again once we again have funding for our proposed projects. So our relationship is ongoing.
All right, thank you very much. Marissa, I guess I'll turn it back over to you. I know we have an additional question slide, but I think we could take those via chat and follow up with folks as well.
Yes, thank you, Tim. Thanks, everybody, for joining and taking some time over your lunch hour. We do have some questions, but we will follow up individually as we are out of time. Thank you all for attending, and please feel free to reach out with any additional specific questions. Have a great afternoon.